evening to guide you through a two-part session. Before we come on to the session itself, a little bit about Aberystwyth, who I represent to begin with. So we're on the west coast of Wales, from Wolverhampton, 2 hour 40 on the train direct, 3 hours from New Street. Some people think we're in Scotland because of the Aber. We're definitely not. We're certainly mid Wales west coast. I said Noswaithar, which is good evening in Welsh. Diolch am wrando. Thank you for listening. Any students longer term that are looking at any Welsh institution, whether that's Aber, Cardiff, South Wales, any of the Welsh institutions, you don't need to speak Welsh study in Wales. I'm learning, there's opportunities to learn, but it's a common misconception that you do have to, you don't, but you could learn should you choose to. This is Aber. There's no beach in Stourbridge, I know that for sure. If you found a beach in Stourbridge, you should be rich because there certainly isn't one. And if I take you to the James Bond helicopter shot of our town, so the train, as I've mentioned, which is direct from New Street and Wolverhampton, as well as others, sweeps in to about the centre of the clock, the centre of the image. About a 7 to 10 minute walk to the beach, and then the university is just peeking onto this picture on the left side. This is me growing up. I'm certainly an 80s child. Looking at the decor, the background of some of those pictures, I think my mum and dad have still got the carpet on the one on the left side. They'd hate it if they heard me saying that because it's not true. The rhetorical question I have for you though is, on these pictures, do I look confused, nervous, or excited? Whether you're a parent in the room this evening, whether you're a supporter, whether you're a student, about next steps and life after sixth form, I can guarantee you that you will have a combination of those emotions. Some confusion, nervousness, but excitement at the same time about next steps. I guess the best advice I can give you, a freebie to begin with, is the earlier you effectively engage with the higher education decision-making process, the more informed and effective decisions you will make. And the more informed and effective decisions you'll make, I believe that confusion and nervousness turns into as much excitement as possible for whatever life might bring in 12, 15 months' time. And what we'll be doing this evening is I'll be giving you some key information around two key areas to help you make those informed decisions. For the first 35 minutes or so, I'll be guiding you through the UCAS process, the application process. We'll then have a short breather, and then it'll be a shorter second part for 20-25 minutes where I'll be giving you some hints and tips as to how you can make the most of university open days. Let's get going though with the first part, the UCAS application or the UCAS overview. Let's go right back to basics to begin with though. Before that, some very straightforward decisions for you to rhetorically think about in your head. So if you have a favourite, which is it? Is it ant or deck, if you have a favourite? Now, for those of you who don't know which is which, if you're going to take away anything from this evening, it's this. Ant is always on the left, deck is always on the right. You will never see them the other way around. So if you're going to take away anything from my overview for the next 60 minutes or so, it is that. Another decision for you to make. If you have a favourite, which is it? Is it Dairy Milk or Galaxy? For me, it's the mood I'm in. The final decision for you to make, holidays. Is your favourite skiing, city, or beach holiday? Why am I showing you these three sets of questions? In theory, these are all quite straightforward decisions that we all make on a, well, regular-ish basis, I guess. They're all straightforward ones. I can't guarantee that the decisions around UCAS and the university application process will be as straightforward as these. They're not straightforward decisions. We expect students at 17, 18 to make big, positive, life-changing decisions. So whilst I can't guarantee that all of the decisions that students need to make over the next 12, 15, 18 months around their university process, the university application and so on, I can't guarantee they'll be as straightforward as these. But what I will say is that they are really positive decisions that they're going to be making. And my aim in the first part this evening is to let you know when these key decisions need to be made and what things they need to consider at that time. So I'll be guiding you through a mock UCAS calendar that I'll be using throughout the first part of this evening session. Before I come on to that though, I want to go right back to what UCAS actually is, because people can sometimes get confused or worried about, they hear the term UCAS, What actually is UCAS? UCAS is the organisation or the body that is responsible for managing applications to higher education courses in the UK. So what a student will do is they will complete their university or their UCAS application via the UCAS website, also known as the UCAS Hub. Universities will view the application via the UCAS Hub, and then students will start to receive responses from institutions from there. So I guess in essence, think of UCAS as the middleman. They're the body, as I say, that manage the whole application process. And as I've mentioned, what I'll be doing throughout the first 30 minutes or so this evening is guiding you through a mock UCAS calendar to let you know what key decisions, what things need to be thought about, and when. And what we'll be starting with now is before September of year 13. So, i.e., what to be thinking about now. Firstly, imminently, the college will be working with students to begin their application. They can't submit the application just yet. That will come in the autumn. But the key message from me now, things to be thinking about, is or are effective research. A good and a strong application to university has the right courses at the right universities. And you only get to that point by undertaking effective research. And what I'm going to do for a moment or two now is guide you through the best to not so best ways to undertake effective research to ensure the right courses and the right universities go on that application. The best way by far is getting on university open days. I'm not going to go into any more depth on that for now because we've got a whole 20-25 minutes in the second part this evening. But in case I do forget to say it later on, one of the things that I'd be researching into now is when are the open days for the institutions that you have an interest in. And if you can get on those open days pre-summer, brilliant, because we're in the midst of open day season now. Just going to park open days now for now because we're going to come back to it in the second part of this evening's session. As Lou mentioned earlier, the college year on year have a huge careers fair, careers and HE fair on site in Stourbridge. That's where, from a university point of view, there are so many tens of universities under one roof where students can ask questions to. It's a great opportunity for them to get questions answered from the institutions they're interested in. Another thing that they can do is jump onto the UCAS Hub or the UCAS website and get onto UCAS Course Search. And that's where they can type in any subject in the world and they can start to see which institutions offer that and aligned subjects. And it's a really good way to start to see who offers what they might be interested in. Professional content can be really good to do research as well. There's a platform that's used in college called Unifrog that has a wealth of information to guide students. But there's also other professional content, things like the NHS website for health-based courses, or the BPS, the British Psychological Society, for psychology-based courses. It can give a really good insight as to what a specific discipline may contain or the areas a student might be studying on a particular course. Student content, online vlogs or blogs that are produced by previous or current students can be good. I say can be good because I take them with a pinch of salt because they can be out of date, they might not always be accurate, they might be a very personal experience, and in some cases, maybe accidentally a little bit misleading as well. The best way for students to engage with current students is to meet ambassadors on open days who will give them true and down-to-earth answers to the questions that they might have. People, do not underestimate the power of the college team, the academic and non-academic teams at the college. They have years of experience to guide students. If a student's interested in microbiology, why not speak to their biology tutor to find out what a course in that area might actually contain? The reason I've got depends is to be a little bit direct. Sometimes friends and family can often give a little bit outdated information. One of my friends, he studied at Birmingham City University. He studied at Perry Barr campus, though, which many of you will know has been bulldozed. So I would encourage students to listen and absorb from friends and family, but undertake their own research to make their own mind up. And the irony of this last one is not lost on me. Hard copy literature, prospectuses, they get out of date the day they were printed, like a newspaper. You'll never see a sad face in a prospectus. You'll never see a rainy day picture. Use them by all means, but don't use them in isolation. Use them in conjunction with other methods all the way up to open days, which I believe to be best. So what I'm trying to say here, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, is a good UCAS application has the right unis, right courses in, and I guess you have to put the legwork in at the start to make sure that that happens, and that happens through effective research. Okay, so the students get started on the application. There are a number of sections that they need to complete. I'm just highlighting on the screen to you 5 of what I define to be the key sections. Now, a message from me is a student should see all of these sections as being interlinked. So for example, the college in one way or another are going to write a reference for the student. If a student talks about something in the personal statement, which I'll come on to momentarily, a university will generally expect the college to back them up about that in the academic reference. And they can only do that if the student has told them about it. So there's another tip, that a student should be shouting from the rooftops about all of the good stuff that they do outside of college. Because as I say, a university wouldn't and shouldn't be looking at each section in isolation. They should be looking at everything together. And whilst I'm not going to go through all 5 of these sections because I think they're fairly self-explanatory, the 2 that I'm going to focus on is, secondly, course choices. Come back to that in a minute, but I just want to spend a moment on personal statements. I'm not going to spend too long on this because I know there's other sessions coming up as well around the personal statement. But the personal statement is the student's opportunity to, in essence, sell themselves to universities and show that they are more than just about the grades. And it used to be 1 block of text, but now it is 3 set questions. For parents and supporters in the room, just a couple of bits of advice to help you help the young person with their personal statement. 1, and I'm thinking back to my mom and reading things that I've done in the past, she might not necessarily understood what I was saying perhaps academically, but she could certainly help with the flow. So this is where you can come in as spell checking and flow checking and so on. And secondly, some students, mistakenly, in my opinion, can often struggle with a blank piece of paper. They stare at the piece of paper and they spend too long how to get going with it. The verbal approach with a personal statement to get going with it can be a better way to get to start. So after tonight, as a parent supporter in the room and a student, get your phone out, put it on voice record, and for the young person in the room, get the parent or supporter to interview you. You'll have a bit of a laugh doing it, you'll forget the recording's on. After about 15-20 minutes, listen back to the recording, because I can't guarantee this will happen for everybody, but in my experience, about 80% of people, they'll say something that they never thought to write down. I much rather staring at that blank piece of paper, that verbal approach where you're relaxed because you know the person, you trust them, that can then be your catalyst when you listen back to get those ideas down on paper. So I'm not going to spend any longer on the personal statement this evening because I know there's other sessions on it, but it is 3 set questions. And hopefully there's a couple of tips that I've given you as parent supporters to help the young person with it moving forward. Okay, so the students getting going with the application. There are a few exceptions. For example, if they're applying to Oxford or Cambridge, or medicine, dentistry, veterinary science, or veterinary medicine. But in the main, students can apply for up to 5 course choices. And in my worked example throughout the evening, I'll be coming back to this example throughout. I'll be using the area of business management, business and management, and so on. Now, in my example, I've used 5 different universities. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but in my example, I have gone down that route. Now, a student only gets 1 personal statement for all of their 5 choices. So in my opinion, the 5 choices need to be in the same or at least aligned areas, because it'd be very difficult in a personal statement to show your excellence in nursing and business at the same time. So in my opinion, they should be the same or at the very least aligned areas. A few bits of extra terminology for you that students might hear in the coming months: aspirational, solid, and safe. In my opinion, one of their 5 choices should be an aspirational choice, one at a push 2 grades above what they're predicted. I think 2 of their choices should be solid choices, i.e. at what they're predicted, and 2 of them should be safe, i.e. 1 or 2 grades below what they're predicted. What you're trying to do here, or what the students are trying to do, is cover all the bases and cover the various eventualities that they might be. Now, in my example there, I've just used a 1-2-2 split, but it could be, after further conversations with the college, a 1-3-1 split or a 2-2-1 split. But you get the, hopefully you get the idea that we're trying to cover all of the bases with the different eventualities that can come by having those aspirational, solid and safe choices. Another bit of terminology, which I'm kind of not sorry for, is something called the UCAS entry grades tool. Quite underutilized in my opinion. This is where on the course pages on the UCAS Hub or the UCAS website, at the bottom of each page should be something called the UCAS Entry Grades tool. And that's where you can see things like acceptance rates, but also, perhaps very helpfully, students will be able to see what a university advertises as the entry requirements, what they need to be, but also in reality, what universities have accepted people with grades-wise in the past. So for me, it can be a really good tool to use to make those informed decisions. Some really dull but important stuff as they work through their application. So again, this is where, as parent supporters, you could potentially give advice or at least check with students. So it's very easy with the application, when we all do applications, to not get everything accurate. And it's really important that students list their previous and current qualifications accurately. It's also really important, and you may chuckle at what I say now, but they put the right universities down on their application. It depends how you look at the numbers. There's 5, 6, maybe more universities in Birmingham alone. It's very easy to, if you're rushing an application, not to put the one down that you think you are. So encourage the young person again to make sure it's right. And the same applies for the courses they're applying to. Don't rush what is a little bit of an administrative process to make sure they're right previous qualifications, they're right current qualifications, the right unis they want to apply to, and the right courses they want to apply to go on there. There is a fee, it's £34.50. It's waived for students in receipt of free school meals, and it's also waived for care leavers. Now, I'll come back to the UCAS tariff momentarily, but if students are studying qualifications outside of college, they could attract UCAS points, and I'll come on to UCAS points in a moment. But my message is, if they are studying things outside of college, they need to go onto the application as well, because it could be the tipping point that leads to a university making a student an offer. So qualifications outside of college that could attract UCAS points include music qualifications, but also lifeguard qualifications as well. The college will see the student's progress throughout. If a student, or as parent supporters, you have questions, just ask. There are no daft questions. It'll be more so when they get going with the application, I would think, but get the advice. I'd much rather they ask and get it right than guess and get it wrong. And the student should also remember it's a professional document. My opinion is that they should use a personal email address, but also that's professional sounding as well, not one that they designed in year 7, which might not be appropriate. So you get the idea again, hopefully, that it is a professional document that is being viewed by universities. Let's move on with the calendar to some key dates. I know the team are going to mention in the break, I believe, some of the internal deadlines. My role this evening is to give you some external dates. So for students who are applying to Oxford and Cambridge, Oxford or Cambridge, medicine, dentistry, vet med or vet sci, the key external equal consideration date, as it's known, it's not technically a deadline. Equal consideration date is mid-October. So for applications received up to that point, universities have to consider them equally. For pretty much everybody else, the key external date or the equal consideration date is mid-January. Now, once again, students can apply after that date, but universities are under no obligation to consider their application. In essence, any application that's received before this date, they have to consider equally. However, I'm not going to cover them now because, as I've mentioned, the college are going to mention them a little bit later on. But what's not in my calendar is or are the internal deadlines and the internal dates. Hopefully this will come across. I would strongly recommend, insist, if anything, that students adhere to the relevant internal college deadlines. The reason for that is that the student is doing one application, the college is processing hundreds. They need time to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and so on. It's like anything. If you ask me to rush to do something, there's going to be errors that are probably going to be creeping and so on. So whilst I'm mentioning the external dates now, I would strongly advise that students adhere to the internal deadlines to maximize their application being as strong as it can be. Now, you'll note on that previous slide, in and around January, maybe also come interviews. I'd say interviews are in the minority at the moment. They are offered or they are required by certain institutions and or for certain courses, but I would probably say they're not really in vogue at the moment. If a university, so some people also incorrectly think that all university courses do interview, and it's definitely not the case that they do. But for those courses that do interview, I'm not going to go through what I've got on screen because I think it's fairly self-explanatory. But I would encourage the student to get some interview practice. The interview is not there to trick a student. It's there as a tool that a university will use to assess whether the student is right for them. So some of the interviews might be online or face-to-face. The university should have the personal statement in front of them whilst they're interviewing the students, and they may ask them to elaborate on certain things that they talk about in their personal statement and reflect on them. Some of the interviews might be what is known, I never get the M's the right way around, I think it's mini multiple interviews, where they might spend 10 minutes with one stakeholder in the field, then they move to another table and spend 10 minutes with another, and 10 minutes with another, and so on. But again, as parents and supporters in the room, this is where you can support the young person, because interview practice and technique, the basics of courtesy, asking questions at the end and so on, because all these interviews are for, as I say, are there to assist the university in making a decision as to whether the student's right for them, and to then help the student potentially get onto that particular course for whatever destination they might want to go onto in the future. Moving on with the UCAS calendar, we move to the spring. Now, the reason I've got an asterisk next to it is that it can really vary as to when the three things that I've got on screen happen. So I've said spring, but in some cases it could be before then. So it's very difficult to give exact time frames around these three things because, as I say, they vary from individual to individual. But the three things to mention are universities replying with an outcome, applicant visit days, replying to offers. Let's take them one by one. And let's go back to my worked example. So what I want to do now is give you some possible outcomes, replies from universities, what they could possibly be. In my case, the first university and course has come back with a conditional offer in grades. So they are saying that the student can have a place on the course should they attain AAB at A level. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. They're the grades a student needs to get, and if they want it, the place is on the course conditional of them attaining those grades. The second university and course has come back with unsuccessful. For whatever reason, they cannot offer them a place on that course. Two reasons perhaps why that might be so. Firstly, it could be their aspirational choice and the university believed that they wouldn't meet the grades that were required. Or secondly, they just didn't like what they saw in the personal statement. They didn't see how a student embraced the subject outside the classroom, how they had the edge. But for whatever reason, they could not make them an offer. University 3 has come back with an offer in points. So some universities make offers in grades and others in points. All of the UCAS tariff is grades are turned into points, and certain universities will ask for a certain number of points. So you can see on the right side of the screen, I've got an extract of the UCAS tariff table for A levels. So if a student gets a grade B at A level, they get 40 points. If they got 3 Bs, it'd be 3 times 40, 120. Now, the good thing about the tariff system where universities make offers in points is it gives much more flexibility. Firstly, you could get to the 120 through a variety of ways, maybe 2 A's, which would be 96, and a D. So there's flexibility there. But also, as I've mentioned just a few moments ago, if they're studying any qualifications outside of college that attract UCAS points, they can potentially go towards the points that are required. University 4 is coming back with an offer in points at 136, and University 5 is coming back with what is known as an unconditional offer. An unconditional offer is quite rare at the moment. I would say, give or take, about 2% of students get one. An unconditional offer is where the university has seen academic excellence elsewhere, and they are saying to the student that they can have the place on the course if they want it, no matter what. They're rare at the moment. The big takeaway from me is for students in the room, especially if you are in the very minority that gets an unconditional offer, that is absolutely not an excuse to take your foot off the gas. I'll give you an example as to why. So when I went to university to begin with, I dropped out. I went back a year later. What did they look at a year later? They looked at my A-level grades. And if for whatever reason I would have taken my foot off the pedal and not got the grades I did, that could have had a negative impact later on down the line. So I'll say it again. If they have got an unconditional offer, perhaps because they've done an entrance exam or because they have submitted a portfolio for an arts-based subject, it is certainly not an excuse for them to take their foot off their current studies. And I feel so strongly about that. Few other conditions that might be associated with an offer. So if they're applying to a science-based degree, they might need a particular A-level grade in biology. If they're resitting any GCSEs, that could come into the picture as well. And if they're applying, for example, to education, they would need potentially a satisfactory DBS check. Okay, so they've had the responses from universities. Then they may be invited to what is known as an applicant visit day. An applicant visit day is generally where universities invite students to them once they've received an offer. So they roughly take place in the spring. And because the student is a lot further down the line with the process at that point, the research never stops. They are invite only, whilst an open day pretty much anyone can go to. But students will have questions because they're further on down the line about course content, about employability, about whatever. And they are different to an open day. As I've mentioned, they are generally invite only, but they can be a lot shorter, a lot smaller, and they can be more hands-on as well. And because of that, I'd strongly recommend that students attend them, even if they've already been to that university earlier on an open day. Now, I've mentioned that they generally happen post-offer, once a student's received an offer. In perhaps a minority of cases, students might be invited to one at the same time as an interview, so maybe at the pre-offer stage. But in my experience, that's more in the minority. And I know what I've got on the screen now is such a cliche, but they are there to see or help a student see how, if they can fall in love with the university and the course that they might want to attend. And as I say, between now and next spring, the questions that they have at an open day that they might go on in the very near future could be very different to the ones they have next spring. And as I say, they're later on down the process. They'll have more in-depth things to ask. And the applicant visit day, also known as offer holder days or applicant days, different name, same thing. And I'd therefore strongly encourage that they attend those. Okay, so they've been on the applicant days. Now let's move on to the power being in the students' hands. So they've had the responses from universities, they've been on applicant days. Now, in its simplest form, they need to narrow the 5 down to a maximum of 2. Firstly, the university and the course in an ideal world that they want to go to. They would make that what is known as their firm or their first choice. In my example, I've gone with University 4 and Course 4. In addition to their firm or their first choice, they could also have what is known as an insurance choice, a second choice, a backup choice. And the purpose of the insurance choice is that if they don't meet the terms of their first choice, I don't like the words drop back, but I think hopefully you'll get what I'm trying to say by using those words. They would drop back to their insurance or their second choice. So once again, firm first choice, the one they want to go into in an ideal world, and then a second or an insurance choice, which if they don't meet the terms of their first choice, they would then potentially go to their insurance choice. And I guess in its simplest form, the rest simply disappear. Now, logic tells you that their insurance choice, the conditions of that offer, need to be lower than their firm or their first choice. The reason for that is if they don't meet the terms of their firm or their first choice and their insurance choice is higher, well, they're never going to meet the terms of their second choice if that insurance choice has higher requirements. So logic tells you that the conditions of their insurance choice needs to be lower than their firm or first choice. So again, narrowing the 5 down to a maximum of 2. Moving on with the calendar. So we'll move on now to February, Marchish time. Before I come on to the 2 things that I've got on the screen now, just a little mention about other university deadlines that aren't in my calendar. So there will be other deadlines that students need to keep an eye out for, potentially around key dates for applying to accommodation. Different universities may have different dates that if a student applies for accommodation by this set date, they may be guaranteed accommodation. So that there's other university deadlines that students need to keep an eye out for as well. But looking at February and March, so student finance opens at that point in years gone by. It's got a new name for next year. It's been called Lifelong Learning Entitlement, also known as LLE. In essence, for full-time undergraduate students, the package of support that they receive is the same, in my opinion. There are some tweaks around the edges, but it's very, very similar, if not the same. But just a bit of terminology to mention, Lifelong Learning Entitlement, LLE, is in essence the new name for student finance. It is a completely separate application to this UCAS application, so it's completely separate to this one. There's also a process around this time called UCAS Extra. So UCAS Extra, I'm not going to go into too much depth about it because I know the college will support students with this if they require it. UCAS Extra is, for example, if a student has received no offers back from universities, and what they can continue to do is they can continue to apply for courses one at a time in and around the springtime. So if they get no offers back from universities, all hope is not lost, and far from it. The college would support them with the process called UCAS Extra, where they can continue applying for courses one at a time. Finally, just before I hand back to the team for the couple of minute breather and some internal information, moving on to August of next year, the summer of year 13. Before I come on to results confirmation and clearing, again, in and around this time, this is where universities may send out additional information around reading lists and Freshers Week information. And I know it's a bit of a dull thing that I'm going to say now, but again, for students in the room, keep an eye out on emails because you will get a bit of an overload, I think, sometimes of correspondence. But it's really important that you check emails and look for dates, look for what happens when and so on to ensure you're prepared for that transition to university. Okay, so results are due, and then there's the processes called confirmation and clearing. So let's start with confirmation. So going back to my worked example, confirmation is the process where universities, they will get students' results. So students will get them on a Thursday, next August, mid-August time, give or take. And universities generally get them the weekend before they do. And the reason they get them early is to undertake the confirmation process, which in its simplest form is where they look at what grades a student has attained and whether they've met the terms of their offer or offers, and whether they can be confirmed as having a place on the course. So let's go back to my worked example. So if a student meets the conditions of their firm or their first choice, they would be placed there. If they don't meet the terms and the conditions of their firm choice, they would move to their insurance choice, their second choice. Again, I don't like the words drop back. That's not a fair wording to use, but it's the easiest one I can think of to get the point across. They would then potentially, they would go to their insurance, their backup choice. And another point to make as well is a student should be prepared to go to their insurance choice. There's an argument to say if they're never prepared to go there, they shouldn't be putting it as an insurance choice. So if they meet the terms and conditions of their firm choice, they'll be placed there. If they don't meet the terms of their firm choice, but do meet the terms of their insurance choice, they would be placed at the insurance choice. If they don't meet the conditions of either, they would go into a process called clearing. And a huge takeaway again from me this evening is please, please, please be around on results day. There's two key reasons for that. One, so that the young person can share in their successes with their college peers, friends, staff, and so on. There's a lot of work that goes into getting those level 3 A-level qualifications and so on. So to share in the successes with their peers, I think is particularly important. But the second reason to be around on results day is if they need the process of clearing. And again, in its simplest form, what clearing is where a student is not placed at their firm choice or their insurance choice. And what they have to do is, I'm using telephoning, but there are other methods as well now. But that's where they would ring around universities who still have places available on courses to, in essence, sell themselves to those universities. Now, I say it could be mainly done through the phone, but there's social media and other methods as well. And it's far easier for students to use the process of clearing with the support of the college rather than if they're halfway across the world on holiday somewhere else. It is absolutely not an inferior option. Thousands of students every year are placed through clearing, but I'll say it again, it's much easier for a student to use clearing with the support of the college, for example, rather than that if they're not in the local vicinity. Team, couple of minute breather from me. Did you want to come in with some internal info?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. As always, that's just really comprehensive. We've had some questions in the chat, and I know you're taking a breather, but we have answered some of those in the chat, but I am going to possibly ask you one of those, I think, if I can. One of the questions that Harry asked was, will the conditional offer be the same as the entry requirements? And I've said not always, but we'd ask for some clarification on that. And I don't know if you can clarify that for us, but conditional offers, are they always the same as the entry requirements, Jeff?
It's very difficult to say from an institution to institution point of view, because it can vary. What we do at Aberystwyth, we make offers in a range. So the offers generally come at some point in the range. I know you've covered questions around contextual offers as well, where the requirements may be different. But in my experience, universities advertise what they're looking for in terms of grades. It's a bit of a supply and demand thing as well. So what the demand is for a particular course and whether there is any movement on the grades. And this is where another thing as well. So whilst a conditional offer may be at and around the advertised grades, what some universities might do is come results time, they will get the results the weekend before students do, and they would look at near misses then. And what they could do at that point is if a student has missed what the requirements were by 1 or 2 grades, they might see if they can forego those 1 or 2 grades by seeing excellence in the personal statement. So again, that's another example of where what they advertise isn't always what they accept students with. And also, if I'm being completely transparent, which is my job this evening, many institutions will amend their grade requirements through clearing as well. So that's another thing just to keep just to mention as well. It's a really difficult one to specifically answer, but in my experience, universities, their entry requirements, and I'll make this example up. If a university is asking for treble A at A level and a student applies with treble E as their predicted grades, I don't think they're going to get an offer back from that institution. Where there can be a bit more flex, potentially in negotiation, or not negotiation, but flex, is where a student is very close to what the entry requirements are. And they might look at other things in the personal statement, like experiences and so on. I've probably not answered that question at all, but I think I'd revert back to your shorter answer of not always. But again, on an open day, that is, and I will come on to open days in a minute, that is a perfect question for the institutions you're interested in as to, you advertise these grades are required, do conditional offers, how close are they to what you're asking for? Do they match, which is in very many cases, or are they slightly lower, or, you know, what is the case?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jeff. That's really helpful. Just in terms of other support that's going to be on hand for students and parents, next week at the same time, well, 5 till 6 p.m. next Wednesday, we have a session on personal statements. So with that section that Jeff covered very briefly, we'll be covering in more detail about those 3 sections that are there, the 3 sort of questions. And I think it would be very helpful for students and parents to be on that webinar as well. And there is also
sorry to interrupt you, Lou. I've just popped the details of that into the chat along with the link to attend.
Super.
But we will send it out as well separately.
That's great. And also we had a recording of a session on student finance, and although most everybody will hopefully have been looking at student finance, there is a recording as well of a session that we did available, and I don't know if we can find a link to that at some point before the end and put that in. That would be really helpful. As Jeff mentioned, and as Faye has put in the chat, if you want to scroll back on the chat, there are the internal deadlines and the external deadlines for both early entries and other universities. So hopefully everyone can see those deadlines. Those internal deadlines, as Jeff said, really, really key that you sort of take note of, and that your personal tutors will be going through your applications with you, but those are deadlines internally, and you will be able to see those external as well. There have been a few other questions that I'm hoping that we've answered. One was about deferred entry. And Faye put a really comprehensive response on that. But just to say, not all places are possible to defer. But if you know which university you're going to, you want to go to, and they will accept a deferred entry, then you can apply this year. Of course, as Faye put there, you can also apply either through clearing or the following year with your grades as they turn out. And so that can be, again, a personal choice, and you've got a wider range of choices there of courses and universities that will accept you once you've already got your grades. So in terms of those taking a gap year out, we would also recommend that most students have a plan for that gap year and don't just free fall, because actually I think that is a good idea to have some sort of plan. I think parents like to see a plan as well. I know I certainly would, but if you'd like to come and have a one-to-one appointment with Faye or myself as careers advisors, we're very happy to do that, both to help with making some university selections, any advice you need. Personal statements is usually dealt with by the personal tutors, but anything else to do with choosing universities, courses, all of that we can help with. So hopefully that's given you some basic information. I'm going to pass back to Jeff. Let me just check. There was a new message. I think those are the things that Faye's been putting in the chat. Jeff, I wonder if you'd like to continue with your presentation, and then we'll come back to final questions afterwards. Thank you.
No problem. And just another point on the question you asked around whether conditional offers come around where entry requirements are. I think if you were going to ask me to put the house on as a definitive answer, I would say they do come at and in around what entry requirements are. And one of the reasons for that can also be, if I'm thinking of science-based degrees where the conditions might be, I don't know, A, B, they may also be an additional requirement that you need to have an A, for example, in A-level biology. And why I mention that is there's academic rationale behind why they need the certain grades, because they don't want to set you up academically to fail as well. So yeah, I think the entry requirements are a very good indicator, guide, maybe there's a stronger word than that, as to what the university is looking for in terms of grades. Whether there's flex on that later on down the line, or whether with offers that they could come back with, again, it's one for each individual institution, but also course at each individual institution as well. Okay, so let's move on to the second part of this evening session. Shorter, 15-20 minutes or so, how to make the most of university open days. University open days are an outstanding source to make informed decisions. And this next 15-20 minutes is what I'm going to be doing is covering 6 key areas to help you get the most of those open days. And we're going to take them one by one, and we're going to look to begin with at things to think about before you get to an open day. So in its simplest form, again, an open day is where university opens its doors at various points in the year, invites visitors in to help the visitor to see whether it's a place, a location, etc., that they could see themselves living, potentially, and studying. You can just turn up to an open day. If you've seen one that's advertised, you could just turn up, no problem. Personally, I wouldn't recommend just turning up, because there's things to think about before you get there. And by signing up beforehand, you should get a program, so you can map out who and where you want to go on the day. It will just help you more so by signing up rather than just turning up on the day. Some people say to me, what if I sign up and don't go? That's no problem. People, hundreds, thousands of people probably do that. So don't worry if you don't turn up, but it means you get information beforehand so that that limited time that you've got will be best spent. And because of that, you can plan your day. You won't necessarily get to see all of the different areas that you want in that short period of time. So you're probably going to have to prioritize as to who and what you see. And you can only do that if you've got the information beforehand. And also, you're going to want to plan your journey. Open days, I mean, they generally start early-ish in the morning. Do you need to be there by the start of the open day, or do you not need to be? You can plan the day, you can plan your journey, how long it would take to get there. For those of you who are looking at studying at local universities, personally, and going to commute to the university if you went and studied there, personally, I do the journey that you would do if you actually attended that university on a full-time basis, whether it be bus, train, and so on. We all think we're going to remember everything, but we don't. So I'd recommend, and I know it's not always possible, taking somebody with you who can give a different perspective, and also some pen and paper so that you can write notes. And also you can, on the way, back to that in a moment, but also as well, you can consider the personal statement. Sorry, Lou, am I still coming through okay?
You are, yes. There was a little blip there, but you are coming through. Yes, thank you.
Perfect. So, yeah, considering the personal statement as well. That's really important. I'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, let's move on. So you've planned what to think of beforehand. Now, what are the must-dos at the event? As I say, you won't necessarily be able to get through everything that you want to get through on the open day. And I think there's 3 key stakeholder groups that I'd encourage you to engage with on the open day. Don't worry, we're all super friendly. There are no daft questions on an open day. And these are the 3 stakeholder groups that I'd encourage you to engage with throughout the open day so that you come away with answers. Now, inevitably, you're going to want to engage with academic departments. And when you visit academic departments, you'll potentially have a talk, a subject talk. You'll get a tour potentially of the facilities. You'll find out about the course, how you're taught and assessed, what links the department has with industry, if the course has accreditation, the rubber stamp of excellence from the relevant professional body. But also you can be finding out from the academic department what they are looking for in a strong applicant, and that's what can feed into the personal statements, and I'll be coming back to that again in a moment.
Just as important as engaging with academic areas, though, I would strongly recommend that you engage with non-academic areas. Often this can be overlooked and mistakenly, in my opinion. Now, the non-academic areas that we want or you will want to engage with will vary from individual to individual. And we've all got different needs, wants and expectations. So some of these might be more relevant to you, but you'll have the opportunity to engage with accommodation teams and potentially get a tour of the accommodation facilities or the different accommodation that's available. That might not be as relevant to you if you're a commuter student, for example, but you can have conversations with the student support team, the careers team, talk about finance and funding, visit the students' union, who is the representative body, I guess, of students. And also, if you've got any specific admissions queries, you can have conversations with the admissions team as well. In my opinion, as mentioned, non-academic areas can often get forgotten about, but I'd recommend, if possible, not to do that, because, as I say, there are different non-academic elements that we need to find out about to help with the successful transition to university. The most important stakeholder group, in my opinion, to engage with, though, is or are student ambassadors. Student ambassadors at ABBA, they're generally there in yellow t-shirts on the day. They are generally dotted around campus. They might be signposting you. They might be taking you on a campus tour, but it's your opportunity to ask them about their own journey, experiences, the support they've received, what they want to go on to in the future. But also, one of the things that I would absolutely critically be asking student ambassadors is, what would they be telling their previous year 12 or 13 self? What would they tell themselves from 18 months, 2 years ago? And moving on from that, now I'm going to be giving you some of the key insider questions to ask on the day. You ask questions, you'll leave with answers. You don't ask questions and you'll leave with questions. And of course, there's opportunities to get those questions answered at a later date. But that's why the plan beforehand to get the most out of the day is critical. So the questions that you want answering, you ask them throughout the day. And what I'm going to be giving you now are some of those questions that I'd recommend considering asking throughout the multiple open days you get onto. Firstly, no such thing as a perfect applicant, but there are good and strong applicants. So I'd be asking, what are the top things you're looking for in an applicant? Now, this is why these pre-summer open days are critical, in my opinion. So we're in open day season now, as I mentioned at the start of the first session. If we were sitting here in 5 weeks' time, I'd say we wouldn't be in open day season. The next ones would either come in August or in the autumn. They ask on an open day, students, what are the top things you're looking for? An academic says ABC, they say X, Y, Z. If they found that out on an open day before the summer, they've got, not only do they know what they're looking for in a personal statement, but also as well, they've got time to plug any gaps that they might have. The autumn open days are great, absolutely fantastic, but I think these pre-summer ones are even better, in my opinion. What will I actually be studying? So a key bit of information that I give to students when I talk to them is, don't just judge the course by its title. You cannot get the whole of history, for example, since the beginning of time into one degree. Yet some students say, I want to study history, but what areas, what periods, what eras, and so on. So don't just judge the course by its title. Make sure you ask if you will be told on a subject talk, but if you want to know more information about what you'll actually be studying, this is the opportunity to find that out. And on that, how will you study? Will you be theory? Will there be practical? Will there be opportunities for you to learn what you've learned, put into practice? How will you be assessed? I don't think anyone likes to be assessed, but as a student, how do you like to be assessed? Exams, coursework, presentations, and do the degrees that you're looking at adhere to those forms of assessment? This is really an interesting one. So I speak to students when I'm out and about at fairs on a regular basis, and they can be quite confused. They kind of know that they want to study something within international politics or law, but they're not exactly sure what they want to study. So, or they might be torn between multiple subjects. And an open day is an excellent opportunity to tap in to academic knowledge. So they can have conversations with academic staff and say, that they like this or they don't like that, or they don't even know what that is, or they have a particular passion for a certain area. And by having that two-way chat, it can really help students make an informed decision about what course to, or maybe even not study as well. So the open day, of course, is about seeing the place, the university, the location, find out about the course, but also it's tapping into that academic knowledge to really help the student make an informed decision as to whether a subject or subjects could be right for them. What jobs and professions open to me after graduation from studying a particular degree? Where have people gone on to after studying that subject at your university? What's the added value? How am I going to leave the institution with more than just a degree? So what links does the department have with industry? What academic leaders do they have? Are there opportunities to undertake study abroad, work abroad, volunteer abroad? How am I going to get that added value so that I leave with more than just a qualification? What scholarships and bursaries can I apply for? Cost of living, very important factor at the moment. So students would refer to scholarships and bursaries in essence as free money, because generally it doesn't have to be repaid. So what are the institutions offering in that regard? What different accommodation options are there available if you're looking to live away from home? We've all got different expectations, requirements, essentials, desirables. What are yours? And for students who are potentially living and studying there 24/7, what is student life like at the uni? Who better to ask than people who are there already? And as I've mentioned, they will give you, in my experience, true and down-to-earth answers to the questions that you will have. So I've not covered all of the questions you can ask. Obviously, I can only give you a flavour, but these are some of the things that I'd be encouraging you to think about asking so that you do leave with answers. Let's move on to exploring the location. A top tip is don't just go on one open day, get on multiple open days. Until you've compared and contrasted, you won't know what's right for you. And I know it takes time, effort, and money in terms of exploring various locations. But if you as a student are going to commit to 3 or more years of your life there, you need to do yourself that favour by exploring the city, the town, the location, and multiple of them. And it's really important that you do that, because anyone who's currently in year 13 would tell you that you get a feel for an institution by going, and a location by going, that you won't get from any other avenue. You never go and buy a house without going to look at it, and it should be exactly the same with the university. And if you go to Aber, go and see the alpacas, go and explore the natural beauty. Maybe I should leave this on for the next 5-6 minutes or so. It's very relaxing, but it is a key point. You as a student will be potentially living and studying there for 3 or more years. So you need to make sure that the location offers what you are looking for. And I know what I'm going to say now takes time, effort, and money. I get that. But for universities further afield, I'd recommend spending the night there in and around the area so you can explore the location 24/7 to see if it offers what you're looking for. And when you're doing that exploration, just split it into 2 halves. 1, explore the location. What is it that you want for daytimeness? Aber, beach, mountain biking, natural beauty, fantastic. But also, secondly, explore the location from a nighttime point of view, when some would say when the city, the town, the location, I guess, comes to life. And does it offer what you're looking for? Arts, cinema, pubs, clubs. If you're a commuting student, do the trains run into the evening? Do the buses connect when you need them to? I don't know. You might not know that yet until you've done that research and explored the location. And on the theme of location as well, I'm proud to use Aber as an example of a cost of living point. Cost of living is not important to everybody, but if it's important to you, different parts of the country have different costs associated with them. Student Crowd are a body that do various research into different things to do with higher education, and they've recently researched into locations and costs of a student accommodation. So they've said that Aber in the top 10 cheapest cities, we're not a city, but let's forget that, for student accommodation. So they say on average it's £134 a week to live in accommodation in and around Aberystwyth. On the right side of the screen, I've got some other examples from that survey. Now, my point isn't really who comes where, but my point is this. If cost of living is important to you, the open day, potentially, and embracing the location, not just for the open day, but the whole location over a day or two, is a good opportunity to research and see what the cost of living is like in the area that you're looking at, whether it be travel, accommodation, recreation, whatever. Because if, and it is an if cost of living is important to you, I think that can be a key cog in the decision-making process. Now, whilst I'm on that as well, some people say to me, isn't or aren't open days where universities kind of put the bright lights on and open their doors and all arms coming in? And there is an element of that. Of course there is. But another tip for you to get around that, and again, I know it takes time, effort, and money, but why not, if you've got a spare day over the summer, go to the location when there's not an open day actually on. Of course, you won't be able to get into various university buildings and so on, but it's another opportunity for you to see and explore the location, not only from a cost side, but from a location in general point of view, when the university's not got its open doors, bright lights on, for you again to see whether that location's right for you. So I think that's a bit of an antidote to people who worry, oh, an open day is, very kind of open and a hello, coming in and very welcoming, which it is. But why not go to that location again when there's not an open day to see whether it's right for you and to further explore the cost of living? And I'm only holding this on for a few seconds, so I know we've only got about 3 or 4 minutes left. Whilst I'm on cost of living, part-time work as well. So there's some visual and letter clues on the screen as to, according to the Times, student part-time jobs. They're a bit out of the box part-time jobs. And whilst you're looking at this and trying to work out what each one is, have a think about what the Times said that the average hourly rate for each of them is or was. So I'll reveal the answers to you, and this is where many of us realise we're in the wrong jobs. Might surprise you, but my point again, on the cost of living theme, I'm going on a slight tangent here. An open day, again, is another opportunity to find out about potentially what part-time work is available, not only in and around the university, but again, speaking to students who are there on the day to find out if they're working as an ambassador, how you become a student ambassador, which is a great role, but also what other part-time job opportunities are in and around the location as well. But also on part-time work, think outside the box a bit. Some people say to me, why would anyone pay somebody to put IKEA flat pack assembly furniture together? Well, there's some people who can't or don't want to. And my point is, if you've got a skill in something, anything, why not use it when you go to university from a part-time job and earning point of view? But if part-time work can have so many financial and non-financial benefits, and again, an open day is a great example of finding out about. Some universities have university job shops, or some universities have on-campus schemes, some paid, some unpaid as well. And an open day is a great way to find out about what's available at the universities that you're interested in. Final 2 sections from me, virtual experiences. There are still some virtual open days that are out there. I'm not going to go into any more depth with what I've got on screen because I think they are okay virtual open days, but I wouldn't put them any higher than okay. The reason for that is, as I've mentioned, you get a feel for a place by going to see it and explore it that you don't get through a screen. And my opinion is virtual open days did a job during COVID, and they still do a job now, but they are not in lieu, in my opinion, of physical open days. So if there are opportunities for virtual open days, fine, but I wouldn't do them on their own. And sometimes from students, I hear from them that they're looking at universities further afield, 3, 4, 5 hours away from home, and they go, well, I'm not going to go on an open day because it's quite far. Well, my response to that is, well, you're prepared to spend 3 or more years of your life there. Surely you need to be going on the open day to see whether it's right for you. If you're prepared to live there miles away from home, surely you need to be prepared to go and see it on an open day as well. So I think virtualness is fine, but it does not replace physical open days, and I think should be only used as a starting point. Final point from me, just before I hand back to the team, after you leave. Don't see the open day in isolation. It is, as I've mentioned, explore the location, spend the night there, see the location 24/7 for itself, and reflect and discuss. What have you seen? What have you heard? What are the gaps in your skill set? What did you like? What you heard? What did you not like? Do you have more questions? And continue the engagement with your discipline as a student. So if on an academic tour, they've given you some guidance as to how you can make yourself a stronger applicant by doing online courses or taster sessions, make sure you continue that engagement with your discipline so that you make yourself as strong an applicant as you can be. Compare and contrast. I'll say it again, and I make no apologies for much of what I've said this evening. I've said 2 or 3 times. Don't just go on one, compare and contrast. And continue the further research on the elements of academic life, non-academic life, student life that are important to you. And as I've mentioned, after open days, there will be, or there should be, other opportunities for you to go back to the university if you're made an offer from them on an applicant visit day. But don't see the open day in isolation. It should be used in conjunction with other methods to help you make an informed decision. Lou, team, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Jeff. That was really comprehensive, and I think such good practical advice for students and parents and carers who are supporting their child through this process. Some of you will have already done this with other siblings of our students, but actually it is quite I think a daunting process for the first time, and each individual child is different and their needs are different too. So actually I think each time you come to this, it's certainly a new experience. I would also encourage students and parents, on the note that Jeff just really sort of finished with about visiting universities. One of the things that Faye and I find really quite challenging on results day is when students say, well, I've chosen this insurance choice and that's where I've been offered, but actually I didn't want to go there at all. And actually, in a way, that is such a shame, because it actually leaves a lot of anxiety on the day, and it leads to that which actually, through the research, as Jeff said, the ongoing research, you can actually stop that from happening. So make good choices. The 5 choices you make can be a whole range, but you then only finalise down to 2, and that insurance choice is really, really important. So I'd just emphasise that. Jeff, one of the interesting questions we've had in the chat, there's lots of them actually, but we've answered most of them in basic form. But one of them is about personal statements and whether universities use AI or human beings to check personal statements. And that's a really interesting thing. And I don't know if you have any comment on that.
The comment I'm going to give you firstly is a very personal comment. So firstly, from the writing of the personal statement point of view, UCAS has a specific page around guidance for students and AI and personal statements. The message from me and Faye, not to put you on the spot, but I think if you Google that, you should be able to find it pretty easily. If not, I'm sure we can find it afterwards.
Yeah, just looking for it now, thanks.
Thank you. The message from me in terms of writing personal statements is, and using AI, just don't go there. Just don't go there. I heard on the radio, from an employer point of view, there's more value now that's being placed on authenticity, and employers and universities are starting to get more of a keen eye to see AI generated personal statements. So don't just go there.
Yeah, thank you.
From a reading point of view, I can categorically say with us humans, I haven't come across, and I know a lot of people in the sector, but I've not come across anyone in the sector who said that they use AI to read and review. Correct. No, I've not come across that at all.
No, and
I know quite a few people in the sector, but I've not come across that.
Thank you, Jeff. I hope that answers the query, and it's a very good one. But I think the response to that from Jeff about writing as well is really important. And I think having your own ideas and your own enthusiasm and your own points of reference as to why you've chosen courses and universities is actually really important to generate and consider, rather than using AI. It does have its place in lots of different ways, but actually in this one, it has to be authentic. And I think that's really important. We have gone on, as I say, to quite a number of the chats, and I've suggested that, you know, any student who has outstanding queries, please do come and see us in the Careers Hub, ask your PT, or indeed, if it's a parent, then please do ask questions in the careers@keds.ac.uk. The open days are terrific. Aberystwyth is one of our actually a lot of our students. We have a lot of students who apply to Aberystwyth, and they are very, very happy. They stay there, and they've made a really good life there. They're very well looked after. And whilst all universities do that, we're particularly grateful to Jeff and his team, who actually support particularly students with special educational needs, and some of those students who transition to university accompanied by some complexities. So do, when you go around all of the universities, as we suggested that you might choose, do ask about the support that's given, because the universities in general really want to help your child settle in really well into the university, and we want to see them stay and thrive there as well. I would just say as well that there are additional things to look out for. For instance, there are many universities who offer integrated masters in some of their degrees. So they may be a 4-year degree as opposed to a 3-year degree. And there are often opportunities to go either abroad or to do something which might be a placement year. So I would suggest that you actually look at all of those options when you look at university choices, to make the best choice in the initial stages. Some universities with placement years give you the option to take those on after you've joined, and some you have to sign up for in advance. So make sure you check those course requirements and those course opportunities out before you apply. Faye's put lots and lots of information in the chat, and we will be sending around this recording. As ever, we're indebted to Jeff. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you, Faye, for doing all of those in the background. Faye does all of the administration for these things as well, and we're very grateful that we can circulate this once it's kind of chopped and
yes, we'll send that out to anybody
lovely.
That's been online tonight, and anybody who registered. We will send around a recording. And Jeff, if you can forward on your presentation, we'll send that round as well, if that's okay.
That's lovely. Thank you, everybody, for being on the session this evening. As we said, our next session on personal statements is in a week's time on Wednesday, the 17th, and it will be from 5 till 6. We do appreciate that some students may not get home for that time, so we'll certainly circulate that afterwards, but please do attend, because it's your opportunity to ask questions, and that will be from the University of Bristol, who will be putting that together. All the very best to Jeff and to all of you this evening. Thank you for joining us. Take good care of yourselves. I'll see you on the next session. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jeff.
Bye. Thank you.